Good morning. Welcome to another Sunday Conversation. We're with Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr. He's in Columbus this week, and we got a chance to sit down with him. We're going to ask a lot of questions. Welcome, Chris. Good to see you.
Great to be back.
You spend a lot of time in Columbus, don't you?
We have. I've been very fortunate. It's great to be back, and the temperature's a little bit nicer today too.
Yeah, it'll just hang around. It'll get hot again. Let's talk about your gang prosecution unit that's in the Attorney General's office. That unit right now is prosecuting cases all over the state, but you just indicted two members, and I want to make sure I got their names right, Marquise Hawkins and Kendrell Rogers, on a gang drive-by shooting murder a couple of years ago. Muskogee County's on the radar when it comes to gang prosecution, isn't it?
It is, and unfortunately, like many other communities, there's gang activity here. But what's most important is that we're doing something about it. And I've got to commend the sheriff's office. I got to commend the DA's office. Columbus interim police chief has been fantastic. But our team has come in. We can now prosecute statewide. And there's a number of cases that we have taken in Columbus. In fact, our unit's only been up for a year. Started a year ago, July of 22. We've indicted 83 individuals statewide, 10 of which were in Columbus. So there has been a focus, and we've got a team that's based out of Albany. We've got one in Augusta and Atlanta, and hopefully going forward, I've been talking with some folks in the legislature, we can also have a team that would be permanently located here to work with federal, state, and local law enforcement.
As we speak, there are members of the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, Columbus PD, including Sheriff Countryman, that are in Chicago right now learning about gangs and coming up to speed. It is truly a local and a state effort, right?
Oh, completely is. You know, in fact, Chuck, a lot of folks think that gangs are just an urban issue, whether it's Atlanta or Columbus or Augusta or Macon. 2018, the Georgia gang investigators did a survey, asked all 159 counties if they saw evidence of gang activity. 157 said yes, which tells me one thing: 2 counties lied. Everybody, whether it's a neighborhood gang, a transnational gang, a nationally affiliated gang, are having to deal with it, and you have to be able to address the issue through federal, state, and local law enforcement, which is what we've done through our anti-gang network.
When people say gangs, define it.
Well, it's criminal street gangs on the one hand. Another area people don't think a lot about: organized retail crime. Groups that are coming together to steal, say, from Home Depot or CVS or Walgreens. They steal a product and they sell it online for, say, half the cost. $100 billion the National Retail Federation says is stolen each year. $2 to $3 billion in Georgia. And this is even when you've got logistics like we do, trucks and rail. This is a big issue for the businesses in our state. So criminal street gangs, violent activity that have been going on, and also organized retail crime groups that are working together to steal product.
When you look right now, and we're sitting in a courtroom, right now Muskogee County has a lot of conflict cases. The governor appointed Stacey Jackson, a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, to be the DA. Stacey's come in and has hit the ground running. But there were about 300 conflict cases. Attorneys from all across the state are pitching in now to try these cases. It takes a team effort statewide to get when you have a situation like what Muskogee County found themselves in, right?
It does, and the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, which is the organization of district attorneys, now helps us quarterback and shepherd those cases to the right place. But you have to have folks that are working together. For example, Stacey was a criminal defense attorney, so there were some cases that were in conflict. After the 2020 election, we had a number of criminal defense attorneys that became district attorneys, so that caseload shot up. And really, the process only works if I have some conflicts and I give them to you. You may have some conflicts. Well, I got to take them in return. That's how the process works. And again, I appreciate the judges and the role that as we've come out of COVID, we're trying to move through that process as a group, as a system, and it works out well when folks are willing to work together.
We're in a 7th floor courtroom here at the Government Center, and in that table right behind you Tuesday, attorney Louis Lamb out of the Southwest Circuit, got a conviction in this very courtroom on a murder case that had been sitting for 4 years to the day of the verdict. that kind of illustrates where we are, right?
It does, and the importance. I mean, it's 4 years is a long time. We had a backload, a backlash, so to speak, from the COVID era, and that was again, that's something that none of us had ever had to deal with. The criminal justice, the civil justice system, didn't have to didn't have a situation like this that we've ever had to deal with. And it really does take lawyers, it takes judges, it takes all of us coming together. But justice delayed is justice denied, so we need to be able to continue to move forward, particularly on the criminal side. But it's also disruptive on the civil side, so we got to continue to move forward on these.
We will be back in just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about stuff that's not Columbus related with Attorney General Chris Carr. Welcome back. We're with Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr. Chris, we've been talking about the gang problems and stuff you've been dealing with, but I want to get to a couple of other things now. This week, 4 district attorneys in the state of Georgia have filed suit against the state, challenging the prosecuting attorneys commission, essentially a commission that will regulate DAs and solicitors and prosecuting attorneys across the state. What's your reaction to that?
Well, this is the oversight board is a reaction to this national trend where you have really progressive DAs that have decided the new criminal justice reform will be to just not enforce laws that they personally disagree with. And that's a dereliction of duty. And folks needed to have some way to deal with this. Judges have an oversight board. DAs are actually a part of the judicial branch. So this oversight board was passed by the legislature. Now, this isn't all DAs. I'll tell you, I have great respect for the district attorneys in this state. The vast majority of them are doing the right way, for the right reason. And it's one thing if you disagree with a law, Chuck, but there's a way to change the law. You go to the legislature. That's the legislative branch. But for one executive branch employee or a judicial branch member just to say, I don't like the law, I'm not going to enforce it, that puts lives at risk and it undermines the system. So the bill was passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, and our office will defend that law.
There are a couple of Columbus area connections to this. I think Randy Robertson was the state senator that sponsored it. He's out of Harris County. But you also, in this circuit, had a district attorney that went bad that your office prosecuted. Would that take care of cases like Mark Jones as well?
Well, I think that case was unique because that went far beyond just having a policy, a blanket policy that said, I'm just not going to enforce these laws. That involved a lot of different other activity and behavior. That may be something that a board would also oversee, but I think the way that we handled it with Mark's case would have to be handled that way. But basically, Chuck, this becomes a debate over prosecutorial discretion, which is really important. It's when a prosecutor looks at a specific case, looks at the facts of that case, and decides whether or not they're going to prosecute. That's fine. That's the job of the prosecutor. What we're talking about is on the front end, writing memos, as many folks have done, or having office policies that, as a blanket statement, I'm not going to enforce this category of law or that, the gang statute or certain misdemeanors. That just undermines the system. And that's what the legislature was trying to get at, is those DAs that have gone beyond what is their role and their duty to have some oversight and some accountability.
What do you expect will happen with the lawsuit that was filed against the state?
Oh, I will defend it. Well, it's got to go through the process, but I think it's on solid ground. I mean, again, judges are members of the judicial branch, so are DAs. Judges have oversight, and so I think it would be, again, I'd be surprised if this particular bill was found unconstitutional.
Switching gears again, Georgia has become ground zero in a lot of the January 6th stuff involving former President Trump. Right now, there's a Fulton County case that could end up in indictment. There was a federal case that was indicted this week. Anything you can say about that?
No, with all this that's ongoing, it's probably inappropriate for me to comment on it, but we'll see where this takes us over the next weeks and months.
Fair enough. I want to talk now about, you made a little news this week. You told a group of Republicans, it's been reported, that you're considering a run for governor in 2026. Are you considering a run for governor in 2026?
Well, first things first, I've got a job I got to do, and I'm so proud that the people of Georgia have given me the opportunity to serve as Attorney General. We've still got a lot going on with human trafficking and gangs, domestic terrorism, things that are going on in Atlanta, elder abuse and others. That's number one. Politically, we've got to get through 24. And I am focused on making sure that there's not 4 more years of a Biden administration, and we've got to make sure we maintain our House and Senate members right here in Georgia. But I do have
It means Republican House.
a Republican House and a Republican Senate right here in the state. But certainly am looking long term, and we have had some great governors in this state. I have had some conversations with some folks, but that will take care of itself when it does. Got to keep our eye on the ball.
Are we in a situation now where politics is not as cyclical as it was? It's almost one continuous cycle, because you wouldn't hear somebody saying, "Hey, I'm in." 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have heard somebody say, "Hey, I'm considering a governor's run, before the 2024 cycle's done in 2026." Are we at a term where politics is nonstop?
Well, I think there's 2 things. One, Georgia is the focal point. We are in the center of the political universe nationally, and because our margins have narrowed, we're still a Republican state, but it's more narrow than when, say, my former boss, Johnny
But we're a
Isaacs, ran
Republican
for.
state with 2 Democratic U.S. senators.
So it's narrowed. There's no doubt about it. I think that's the first thing. The second thing, unfortunately, it's just more expensive to run. And if you're going to run statewide, we're a large state east of the Mississippi. We're the 8th largest state in the nation population-wise. You've got to be able to get out to folks. So I think that's why you've seen just elections in general. You saw it in the 22 cycle. You saw it in the 18 and the 20 cycle. It just takes a lot of money to run the state of Georgia.
Used to, it was mostly Georgia money deciding Georgia races. That's not the case anymore, is it?
No, and again, you've seen it in the last 2 or 3 cycles. The amount of money that's come from out of state, particularly Democratic money. I think if you look at it, you look at the money Stacey Abrams raised and Raphael Warnock and then Ossoff in the 20 and 21 runoff. A lot of that money came from out of state. I think you see a lot more in-state money coming from Republicans. But again, I think because we are the center of the political universe, folks are putting their money into Georgia. And the other thing I think is, the Georgia story, that what we've been through as a state over the last 3 or 4 years, and the leadership that's been provided, by statewide Republicans, I think this story is one that's important and hadn't been told nationally. And the successes we've had coming through a global health pandemic with an economic crisis, social justice unrest, and a historically contested election. And I think you are seeing a lot of folks on the right that have supported those of us that have been statewide. I think you see folks on the left that want to try to flip the state, and that's why so much money's poured in.
You have been a strong ally of Governor Kemp's from day one. When you talk about Georgia's story hasn't really been told on the national level, how much of that Georgia story is Brian Kemp?
Oh, a lot of it is. He deserves a tremendous amount of credit. When he ran for governor in 2018, I was on the stump with him. I never once heard him say, "I'm going to be the best governor in a global health pandemic with an economic crisis, social justice unrest, and a historically contested election." But you know what? Leaders wake up and they go to work each day and they put their head down, and that's what Brian Kemp did. Governor Kemp has done an unbelievable job. He has earned all the recognition nationally for our state. He deserves it. There's no 2 ways about it. He has done the things that he campaigned on, and he has been genuine. Everybody that sees him is around him. This is what he said he was going to do. That's what he's done. I mean, during the pandemic, he would lead meetings with CEOs of hospitals. When there have been law enforcement crises, he's been there with the leadership. He is the guy, he's the general that's gotten out of the tent, and he is with the people of the state, and he has earned the fact that he is the most popular politician in Georgia and one of the most popular in the nation. Well deserved.
Well, and he has led a job creation boom. I mean, if you look just along the Chattahoochee River, from Bainbridge up to West Point, in the last 2.5 months, he's announced 4 projects, $1.2 billion in investment, 1,200 jobs. That's just along the stretch of one river. That's a lot of jobs and a lot of economic development.
It's unbelievable. Again, going back to what we've seen, economic crises, to see the success that this state has had. And he is, again, in the trenches with economic development. And again, we had a great run during the deal years. And then it's just been magnified by a multiple of 5 or 10 or more. To see what he has done to bring jobs at a record level to this state during a tough period of time, again, is a real testament to what he has done and what this state has done and the leadership that we've had. A pro-business environment where we welcome folks from around the country that aren't happy with where they've been. You're going to get a fair shake in Georgia. You've got an environment that we care about business and a good economic opportunity, and it's a great state to be in.
We're getting near the end of this, Mr. Attorney General, and one of the things, do you see a situation where Governor Kemp gets pulled into the current presidential campaign?
If he does, I'm going to stay with my guy. He has been absolutely fantastic, and if that's what he ends up doing and ends up choosing to do, I'll be right there with him, supporting him 1,000%.
Think it could happen?
Oh, I know there's a lot of chatter. He's certainly been a part of the national conversation, and whether it's president, vice president, cabinet, running for the Senate, Brian Kemp's the most popular politician in Georgia, and he is unbeatable in whatever he decides he's going to do.
Last question I'll ask about your stuff. When will you make a decision on the governor's race?
That would be after the 24 election.
So you won't announce anything formally until afterwards?
Nothing officially, that's right.
It's an enticing position, though, isn't it?
Well, again, got to keep our eye on the ball, got the job that we need to do. We got a lot that we have left to do, and then we've got to politically get through those 24 elections.
Well, Chris, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us here in Columbus, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again very soon.
And football season's right around the corner, Chuck.
War Eagle.
Go Dogs.
You have been watching another Sunday Conversation that went off the rails at the end. We hope you come back again next week, because there's no telling who will be in that chair or what college team they'll root for.